Good afternoon. My name is Randy Norton. I work for the University of Arizona. I'm an extension agronomist with the U of A, and I have cotton research and extension responsibilities across Arizona. What I wanted to do today is just give you a little bit of an overview of the season, the 2020 season, some of the things that we experienced, some of the challenges that we faced, and some of the good things that we've experienced in 2020, particularly when you compare it to 2019. This year actually started out pretty good. We had a good planting season. We did have some replant issues in some parts of the state, but for the most part it was a pretty good spring. The cotton came up out of the ground, started growing very strong. We had nice warm temperatures in the late spring and into the early summer, and that cotton really started growing very well. We saw a lot of early season fruit load, saw a lot of 5 and 6 first fruiting branches across the state and in a lot of our trials. And that fruiting continued and held a lot of that fruit well into the middle part of the season. And I'll get back and talk a little bit more about some of the issues that we faced mid-season, but let me just say a few things about kind of some of the other general attributes of this season compared to 2019. So in general, 2019, if you recall, we had much lower heat unit accumulations across the state. In 2020, it was almost quite the opposite. We had extended heat spells where we experienced some pretty significant level 1 and level 2 heat stress in the low desert. So that had an effect on the crop in the low desert. What the ultimate effect will be is still yet to be determined when we start harvesting the crop. But it was a warmer than average summer for the low desert. Now, when we have those kinds of conditions in the low desert, the higher elevations in Arizona actually benefit, and we have seen that in the higher elevations up in the Safford Valley, up in Cochise County. We have seen a lot better growth and development this year as opposed to 2019. And as you know, 2019 was not a very good year for our crop, but 2020, I hope, and early indications are that it will be a better year. We've already harvested some of our plots in Yuma, and they have performed very well, and we hope that's a good indication of what we're going to experience in the central part of the state. Just a few comments about some of the other pressures that we might experience during the year. Pest pressure for 2020 actually was relatively light, as it has been for the past several years. We haven't had a whole lot of widespread issues with either whitefly or with lygus. It's been a fairly moderate year in terms of pest pressure, insect pest pressure in 2020. The one point that I did want to bring up is the issues that we see with weeds, herbicide-resistant weeds. And this is an issue that continues to grow in Arizona. We have documented in every cotton-growing region in the state glyphosate-resistant palmer amaranth or pigweed. So it continues to be an issue that we face in Arizona, and each year it seems to continue to get worse. And so the utilization of rotating different chemistries, not relying wholly upon glyphosate, is going to be important as we move forward and deal with this pest. So there'll be more information as we formulate plans and ideas about how best to address this, but it is something that the growers definitely need to be aware of, that this is becoming more and more of an issue. I mentioned that I'd get back to this heat stress. I want to mention a little bit about what we experienced this year. Starting at the beginning of July, we really saw temperatures increase dramatically, and we saw the number of level 1 and level 2 heat stress days raise pretty dramatically. From July 1st through the middle of September, which is about 77 days, about 80% of those days were actually level 1 heat stress days. Now we know that level 1 heat stress doesn't necessarily impact the crop all that significantly, but of those 77 days from 1st of July through mid-September, about 47% of those were level 2 days. And those are the days we know that will impact crop growth and development, and will definitely impact fruit retention. And we've measured that in some of our trials across the state. And specifically in our heat stress plots there at the Maricopa Ag Center, we measured and tagged flowers and looked at the development of those blooms over the course of the season, and we saw tremendous reductions in retention during that period of late July into early August. In fact, the flowers that we tagged in late late July and evaluated in mid-August, we only held about 3% of those flowers that were set during that time. We had several many days strung together of level 2 heat stress, and a lot of that heat stress was happening right during peak bloom for a crop that was planted in early to mid-April in the low deserts of Arizona. So it's still yet to be determined. I think this is going to be a very good year for evaluating heat stress effects in cotton. We've collected some good data, and we'll continue to collect some data on our plots there at Maricopa, and hopefully have some good information for you come spring on how some of these varieties have performed. But the other part of what we do in terms of evaluating varieties is our variety testing program. And I've talked a lot about this to audiences over the years, but we do a lot of variety testing, both experimental varieties in our advanced strains tests, but we also have our upland cotton variety trials, which are strip trials that we conduct this year in 8 locations across the state. We also do a lot of trials with companies. I'm standing here in Safford right now, actually Thatcher, at one of our locations, one of our variety trials right here. This is a replicated 10 entry, 3 replications of different varieties. It was defoliated about a week ago, but this is just part of the variety testing that we do. And so this year will actually give us the opportunity to evaluate some of these varieties in terms of their ability to tolerate some of the heat stress that we've experienced in the low desert of Arizona. So I think, you know, time is going to tell as we start harvesting the crop here over the next few weeks, what some of the impacts are of the heat stress that we've seen this year. If you were able to keep the crop fairly well irrigated and well watered, I think we have a good chance of having a very good crop. We had a very dry summer, very little monsoon activity, which also complicated the issues with some of the heat stress when you weren't able to have any relief from summer monsoon rains. So anyway, we'll see how things go with harvest. Some of our early results have shown that we've had some good test results and some good yields come back. As we move into the fall here and start harvesting stuff in central Arizona, we'll see how things go. And we'll have all of our results for our variety testing program will be available over the winter months. As we move into next spring and planting season, we'll have all of those publications available to you for the results from 2020. So with that, I wish all of you a good, profitable harvest season. Hope everything goes well, and look forward to seeing you around the field. Thanks.